Sometimes that's what has to happen for real fruit to come forth. All right. You have already been pruned and purified by the message I have given you. Remain in me, verse 4, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine. And you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. So first and foremost, we must remain in him. In him we live, in him we move, in him we have our being. Yes, I am the vine, verse 5, and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. Say much fruit. Say much fruit. I don't want just a little fruit. I want to see much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, I made the comment a little bit ago that the lights aren't going to go on until you flip the switch. But the fact is that apart from him, we can't do anything. But when we're living in him, he's made all the resources available to us. We need more than just light. We need heat and gas and the ability to be able to pay for some of that. So, those who remain in me, and I in them will produce much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. Say with me, say, I do not want to be useless. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want and it will be granted. See, anytime you share that scripture, they're thinking, well, only if it's in the will of God. Well, what did we just say? If you remain in me and my words remain in you, you can ask anything you want. If I'm in him, I'm only going to ask what he wants me to ask anyway. So why do I need to? It's a non-negotiable, non-need to clarify point. And so if you're feeling that way, it's okay. Because it is according to the will of God. We get that. But if I'm in him, his will is my will. His will actually becomes my will. Not my will be done, Lord, but your will be done. Right? And then the will that he has actually becomes what I want. And what I want becomes the destiny and destination that he has because that's his will. If his will becomes my will, then all of a sudden we can begin to produce much fruit. All right, stay with me. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father. I have loved you even as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commands, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love. Okay, another message. I've told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. If you're missing some joy, sometimes if I'm missing some joy, here's what I have to do. I'm not talking about you. You're walking around angry. If I'm walking around angry, I usually have to look at myself and say, okay, Lord, why am I feeling this way? Because obviously, this is not your desire. This is not your spirit. So there's got to be some area in my life right now where I'm being disobedient. So what? I've told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. If we're filled with his joy, then our joy will overflow. So I'm quick to say, Lord, forgive me. All right. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way that I have loved you. Oh, Lord. You mean I have to love you like he loves you? You mean you have to love me like he loves me? You know how much he loves me? You know how much he loves you? He gave his life for you. He gave it all. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends, since I have told you everything the Father told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit. Say lasting fruit. So that the Father will give you whatever you ask for, using my name. This is my command. Love each other. See, if we're producing lasting fruit, the promise is that the Father will give us whatever we ask. As a church, we have to be doing more. So why does Jesus go from being connected to Him, to the Father, and then wrap this portion up with love each other? He's really comparing His relationship with the Father and His relationship to us as our relationship together. He's likening them. And we got a ways to go, would you agree? Oh, maybe a few of us. Okay. Okay. You don't, I do. All right. No, we do. We all know that we do. So, I'm going to say something some may not understand and some may disagree with, but if we're going to be a fit church, it has to be said. A healthy church has to be a church that changes its ways and their level of commitment, not just to Him, but also to each other. See, a healthy church, I don't get it. I really don't like the way most Christians treat the church. Now, stay with me. Most will say, well, we're the church, and we are, but we have a complete disregard for the organization or order in a church, all in the name of freedom. Take a deep breath. I would rather be a church of 100 people committed to His way, doing nothing, and not backbiting, and not being critical, but really truly committed, than a church of 50 people. And see, here's the thing. God can take a church of people that are committed to each other. I'm saying, look. God can take a group of people that are really committed to each other, doing nothing, and eventually bringing them together to do something effectively, than a whole bunch of people that are there the word critical keeps coming to my mind. I mean, just being critical of the worship, being critical of he didn't have to say that. Being critical of the way things are laid out. Being, those boxes are really bothering me. Why would we be doing an egg hunt anyway? Don't you realize that's a pagan holiday? Stay with me. I don't like talking about stuff like this, and I'll tell you why. Because I think that anytime we get off of the power of His resurrection, and get off of the desire to really glorify Him, it gets to be real difficult for people sometimes when you're really not in unity. But these kinds of conversations have to take place. You have to have the hard conversations in your home sometimes with your family in order to be able to come into that place of unity and into that place of advancing together. If we're not committed to one another, we can't really get anywhere. We can't get to where we want to go by ourselves as quickly and easily and more effectively than we can together. Now see, I believe that God has called each of us to a life that's more fit than what we've been living, to a rich and satisfying life, to a life of greater joy, to a life of greater fruit in our lives and most importantly, for the sake of God. And it takes a level of commitment that most just really aren't ready to give, especially in the church. All right. If you don't fully believe in a mission, it will always be difficult to fulfill a mission. Now, I have a mission statement for my home and my mission statement for my life. I have an individual mission statement for my home. I have it hanging above my desk. And it talks about me as a husband for my home and for my wife. It talks about creating an environment of love. And every time I start to get a little bit off of that, I have to go back and sit and look at it. But really, my mission and vision statement for my life is exactly the same as it is for this church. What's the mission statement for our church?
To produce productive citizens for the kingdom.
Produce productive citizens in the kingdom of God. My life mission statement is to produce productive citizens. My desire is to impact and influence my territory. My life is committed to that. If all of our lives were truly committed to that, see, when your life is committed to that, sometimes when a little chaos breaks loose, and I have my moments, don't get me wrong, we all have our moments, right? I'm not talking about our moments, but I'm talking about really living in mission, living in vision, living in for purpose. It's something greater than just ourselves. It really is. So, I have a hard time getting it when people don't get our mission or vision, because it's really been my life, whether I'm coaching, pastoring, working, or leading. It doesn't stop at church. It's work, school, home, and we must do what we say and say what we do, and it starts really with leadership, but it doesn't just end there either. Just because you're not in a leadership role, some are in leadership, some are not. But just because you're now, obviously leadership does have a greater responsibility, but it doesn't matter whether you're in a role or not. If you say you're going to do something, do it. That's a matter of character and integrity. And how can we desire a rich and satisfying life if we don't do what we say and say what we do? How can we really desire more if we can't be faithful with a little? I will say this, if leadership isn't doing their job, who do you think gets stuck doing it? If anyone isn't doing their part, who suffers for it? If the nursery workers decide, I'm not going to show up today, forget them little tykes. I'm just done, I've had it. Who's going to suffer for it? We really don't ask for much here. We're talking about becoming a fit church, but I do ask that your yes is a yes. And too often a person's word, really, it doesn't mean a thing. Now, and I'm not talking about making mistakes. I mean, we all make them. But that really kind of goes beyond frustration for me. It's incompetent, irresponsible, and just wrong. And I'm not talking about imperfections or mistakes. Once again, I'm talking about trends and a way of living and doing things time and time again. If the world doesn't tolerate it, why should we have to? If Let me ask you a question. Jim, if you had a guy that was not showing up for work on time, every single day, and you could never really even count on him to begin with anyway, I mean, is he really worth keeping around? Because it ends up really creating a cancer for everybody else in the workplace. So my question to you then is, why do we put up with that in the church? We do. And I'm just talking about my struggle, okay? Lord, so how can we make this more fit? Now, you can't have 10 people doing the work of 100. It takes everyone. Okay. Matthew 5, verse 37. In the New King James Version, says it this way: "But let your yes be yes, and your no, no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one." Now, I understand